He comes and starts taking videos outside the Senate. There's a parliament police here. And your officers are saying they can't see the governor of Samburu until we had to take it upon ourselves to try and effect a citizen's arrest. Unfortunately, he has a very good spring in his step.
You know what happened. But the bottom line is one, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. There is nobody who is above the law. That is the way it is. And what has been raised by Honorable Fatuma Dulo, the Senator for Isiolo, they are, weighty issues on matters security. And what the National Police Service has done to address the issues of security actually throughout the Republic of Kenya. And I've said that our country is safe, but we have areas that require specific actions to ensure that they are safe.
That Honorable Fatuma Dulo did not stage manage that shooting. This was an act by criminals with very, very bad intentions. And I'm very optimistic that we'll get them. Secondly, Honorable Chair, is the aspect of the delay in the submission of the cartridges to the forensics lab. And this is something I myself noticed when I was perusing the file. And I instructed the RCIO Eastern to give a show cause letter to the investigating officers to explain the circumstances behind the delay in the submission of the 4 spent cartridges. We are yet to get the response, but on the basis of the response that we'll be getting from the investigating officers, then that will inform my next course of action.
Now, yesterday morning, President William Ruto led a meeting of the ODM Central Committee together with the UDA Steering Committee at State House in Nairobi. The meeting was taking place as tensions continued over the widely discussed geographic arrangement ahead of what the term as zoning ahead of the 2027 general election. ODM's top leader Oburu Odinga and his group emphasized the importance of geographic planning, warning that they could withdraw from the board coalition if their demands are not met. Right, moving on, the County Assembly of Embu has passed motions requiring 2 County Executive Committee members to step aside pending investigations on allegations of incompetence and gross violation of the law. Now, Deputy Speaker Ibrahim Swale, MCA Kirimari, moved to the motion to suspend Lands CEC member Raymond Kinyua, while his Ruguru Ngandori counterpart Muturi Mwombo and his submissions to have held CEC member, that is Jamal Runyenje, step aside.
Led to continued illegal acquisition, encroachment, and alienation of public land, including land reserved for critical public utility, such as parcel number Embu Municipality 1112-367, earmarked for the expansion of Embu Level 5 Hospital. Deeply disturbed that the inaction by the same County Executive Committee member undermines the County Assembly authority and violates the principle of accountability and good governance and constitutes a breach of public trust. Now, therefore, this Assembly resolves that the County Executive Committee member for lands, mining, housing, and physical planning, urban development be required to step aside from office forthwith, that is with immediate effect, to allow the independent and impartial and thorough investigation to the alleged gross misviolation of the Constitution and other relevant law. That an ad hoc committee of the County Assembly be established and mandated to undertake investigation into the matter and report back to this Assembly within 60 days with
Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki has urged opposition leaders to stop encouraging young people to engage in violence during demonstrations, saying it is not a solution to the high fuel prices issue. Now speaking in Aldama Ravine Village, Baringo County, while inspecting development projects, Kindiki stated that the increase in fuel prices is driven by the conflicts in the Middle East, which have affected the global oil sector. Now, he criticized the opposition for blaming the government for a situation that Kenya is not responsible for, emphasizing that the government has already taken several measures to reduce the burden on citizens, which would otherwise weigh heavily on them. Additionally, during the visit, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki inspected several road construction projects, stressing the importance of sustainable development in Baringo County.
Hatuwezi kukubali nchi ya Kenya ni nchi chini ya katiba na sheria, na hakuna mtu ako juu ya katiba na sheria. Na vijana wetu, usidanganywe na mtu kiongozi ako na miaka mingi, sio kijana kama wewe. Yeye ameelimisha watoto wake, yeye amemaliza kazi yake ya muhimu duniani, alafu akuje wewe kijana wa miaka 20, miaka 30, bado hujapata familia, bado wengine hawajapata kazi, bado haujaanza maneno yako, alafu uende akuambie uende ukahatarisha maisha yako kufanya mambo ya fujo na kukabiliana na polisi kule barabarani.
Now, the leader of the DCP party, that is Rigathi Gachagua, has declared that the Ukambani region is a true stronghold of the Wiper Party. Speaking in Kitui County, Gachagua urged the Kamba community to ensure the removal of all Wiper leaders alleged to have defied the party in next year's election. He also stated that this move aims to strengthen the Wiper Party and ensure it does not lose its seats to other political forces associated with President William Ruto. And according to Gachagua, by taking these steps, Kalonzo Musyoka will be able to maintain his position as a political leader in the Ukambani region.
Nani aliua Gen Z? Nani alisema vijana wapigwe risasi mguu? Nani ameharibu masomo? Nani ameharibu matibabu? Nani amesabaratisha maendeleo ya Ukambani? Nani anadharau Kalonzo Musyoka kiongozi wetu? Kasongo aende asiende? Muko tayari? Wanapanga na PS anaitwa Nixon Koril. Wanapanga na wasaliti wa jamii. Ile mashamba yote kubwa kubwa huko Kiambu wanaitafuta usiku. Huyu Kasongo na Murkomen na Nixon Koril na Oscar Sudi wanaweka magun, wanavamia mashamba ya Wakikuyu. Wanataka kunyakua hiyo mashamba kwa sababu Kasongo ameuza kila kitu Kenya.
Now, the elections for grassroots officials of the UDA party are ongoing, or were ongoing in Kwale County yesterday, with the members choosing 20 officials at each polling station to represent different party units. So far, the elections have proceeded smoothly despite the presence of only one voting device at each station, which were actually utilized yesterday, with a large number of members turning out at various locations to participate in the process.
Twawaombea kila la heri, Mwenyezi Mungu awajalie watuongoze vyema, wazidi kuendeleza maendeleo.
Ni watu wamejitokeza kwa wingi na kura inaenda vizuri kwa sababu ni kama watu wameelewa umuhimu wao. Na ni watu wamejua kwamba chama iko na nguvu na ndio maana wamejitokeza.
Na matarajio yetu kwa hawa tunawachagua, wawe waaminifu, wawe na ukweli, wasiwe na chuchuchuchu za ndani na upendeleo. Tunamchagua tutakaye na ukweli, Ikiwa tutamuona ukweli hana, hatoenda mbele, atarudi nyuma.
Watu wameweza kujitokeza, hali ya kuwa leo kumeamuka na mvua kubwa, lakini bado wanachama wetu wa UDA wameweza kujitokeza ili kuweza kuchagua viongozi wao katika kila polling center. Hii inatuonyesha ya kwamba chama cha UDA kimeanza kupata umaarufu mkubwa katika hii Msambweni na kaunti yetu ya Kwale kwa jumla.
Now, John Kos, the Registrar of Political Parties, has officially approved the People's Renaissance Movement, that is PRM, as the 93rd political party in Kenya. And upon handing over the certificate, the registrar marked a new chapter for the party as it officials enters the national political arena. Now, speaking about the party's strategic plan, its chairman, Bishop Newton Wanjala, said that the PRM does not intend to join traditional political alliances, emphasizing that it will prioritize fairness and good governance. The party also confirmed plans to field candidates for all positions in the upcoming general elections.
Tulipopata uhuru, wazee wetu walikuwa wanapigania kupigana na umaskini, ukosefu wa chakula na matibabu. Miaka 60 baada ya uhuru, matatizo hayo yanatukabili kama wananchi.
As PRM party, indeed, we are independent. We are going to field all candidates, all the way from the MCA to the presidency. And we are not in 2-term or 1-term. We are a body that entails to bring unity and tranquility.
From the youth to the old, to the business class, and also the common mwananchi. We want to bring together in this country so that our decision making will be people's participation, inclusive and actually conclusive, so that we can build a better Kenya.
Now, Omar Olunga, Secretary in the Department of National Health Services, has called on the healthcare providers to offer services to patients at affordable rates. And speaking during the opening of the health technology exhibition named Meda Expo in Nairobi, Dr. Olunga said that the cost of medical treatment for Kenyans is very high. Now, he emphasized that the government will work closely with all healthcare providers to reduce this heavy cost for patients. Now, the exhibition aims to showcase modern equipment and technology along with services in the health sector.
Now look forward to having our own money to purchase or sustain the technologies that you are so showcasing here today. And that's why health financing is key. For us in Kenya, we have established a mechanism, which is the Social Health Authority, so that we can mobilize resources, both from the taxes and from the citizen, so that we have one pool that can assure you the investments and your technologies can get to the patient. Without answering that question, our existence here today and the things that we show do not make any meaning, because the healthcare system must be able to afford the innovations and the technologies. And this is primary for us.
The State Department has supported initiatives aimed at enhancing value addition and reducing reliance on import of finished medical products, facilitating technology transfer and skill development in pharmaceutical production, and expanding market opportunity through regional frameworks such as Africa Continental Free Trade Area. These factors are guided by our commitment to position Kenya not only as a consumer market, but as a competitive producer and exporter of pharmaceutical products within Africa. Distinguished guests, platforms such as MedExpo and
Right, now nurses from across the country are gathered in Nanyuki town, that is in Laikipia County, for the annual scientific conference aimed at tackling the rise in mental health disorders. Now, the 3-day event comes amid growing concerns of increasing mental health conditions, many of which go undiagnosed, contributing to cases of suicide, gender-based violence, substance abuse, and family breakdowns. Now, on the first day, participants, together with the Laikipia Deputy Governor Ruben Kamuri, held a march to raise public awareness on the importance of seeking timely mental health support. Now, the conference, themed Integrating Innovation in Mental Health Services for a Resilient Future, brings together experts and government representatives with research presentations focusing on behavioral changes, youth mental health, and the risk of suicide among cancer patients.
And this is purely to sensitize our people on the essence of intervening on mental health issues. We are all aware that mental health problem has really become a concern of everybody, not just in Kenya but globally. However, our attention is in Kenya because that is where we are. And in this case, we all know that the prevalence of mental health conditions or diseases is 1 out of every 4 people. It is quite imperative that we sensitize our people and we make them aware of mental health issues and maybe even where they can seek attention. I think this is a good thing, and we really want to welcome everyone as we walk around. Let them know that we are purely coming out to remind them that we are all either affected or we are in one way or another.
Prevalence of mental health or mental health disorders is in the increase, and therefore we need to be able to prepare as a country for our future. We can only prepare that if we are able to create resilience in the healthcare system, among our patients, among our community, among healthcare providers, because like we said, all of us are affected in one way or another. And therefore, we are going to have a number of topics or research papers presented in that particular conference. We will look at the interlink between climate change and mental health. We will look at the interlink between medical diseases and mental health, because we know chronic medical diseases are risk factors to chronic mental illnesses.
Now, the Bungoma branch of the Medical Officers Union has officially announced the start of a strike in the county following the expiration of a 14-day notice which ended yesterday, or the previous day, that is on Wednesday. Speaking to journalists in Bungoma town, led by the branch Secretary General, that is Ekisa Ambuchi, they said that despite various efforts to find a solution, the county government has failed to provide lasting responses to critical issues affecting the delivery of health services. Now, they also warned that they will continue to halt medical services until their demands are fully met.
Ni mwajiri ambaye ni hatari kwa usalama wa wafanyikazi. Manake unapo ajiri wafanyikazi kwa mikataba duni, mikataba ya kibepari, mikataba ambayo kazi yake ni kunyonya damu na kuacha wafanyikazi hoe hae, hiyo ni jambo ambalo halifai kukua katika karne ya 21. Vipengee hivi ni kama mwajiri amekataa kushughulikia mikataba ambayo aliweka sahihi. Tunazungumzia mikataba ya Return Track Formula 2026 na mikataba wa CBA ambayo mpaka sasa mwajiri wa Bungoma kati ya waajiri wengine 46 yeye tu na wachache wengine hawajatia sahihi. Inaonyesha ya kwamba mwajiri huyu hajawajibika katika shughuli yake ya kuonyesha ya kwamba wafanyikazi wanafanya kazi katika hali ambayo iko sawa.
Wiki ijayo kuanzia Jumatatu tutakuwa tukikongamana kwenye hizi ofisi ya governor, ofisi ya county assembly na offices zote, ofisi ya county public service board na ofisi zote husika, ili kwamba kuweza kuwashurutisha waweze kufuata sheria katika utekelezaji wa haki za wahudumu wa afya. Mwaka jana tumekuwa na mgomo wa wahudumu wa afya, na haya mambo tulikuwa tumeweza kuyaongelea na tukasema mgomo umeisha, tutarudi kazi, tufanye kazi. Ila sasa ni miaka 4 na supplementary budget process imeshaisha. Hawajawekeza pesa ya kutulipa mishahara zetu, hawajawekeza pesa ya kutulipa mshahara iliyo sawa. Ujue kuwa kuna wengine wanapata chini ya robo mshahara.
Now, stakeholders gathered in Nairobi yesterday to launch the Interfaith National Hub, a new initiative aimed at addressing the teenage pregnancy crisis, which currently affects 1 in 5 girls in Kenya. And speaking during the launch, the Kilifi Deputy Governor, that is Flora Chiole, called for closer cooperation between the church and the government to end the stigma surrounding gender-based violence. Now, the new hub is expected to advocate for better health policies, prevent early marriages and teenage pregnancies, and safeguard the dreams of young girls across the country.
Adolescents and young people, what is limiting them from being responsible? What is limiting them from having agency to be able to take up the interventions that we are putting in place?
Faith leaders with their roles, they support behavior change, they encourage uptake of service, they guide families and adolescents, they bridge up gaps between the community and government programs, and we see that this is not peripheral.
We must also acknowledge the challenges that continue to affect our families. One of the most pressing being teenage pregnancy, early marriages, mental health, and gender-based violence, including femicide and female genital mutilation.
"29 past the top of the hour. I do for a short breather here on The Drift. Of course, we shall be coming back with the newspapers to tell you what exactly they have to say in regards to the governance of this particular country. Don't go too far.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world. You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
My name is Mary Mombua and I watch EBN TV.
For gospel music, I, Anton Dacho, I watch EBN TV.
I watch EBN TV. Do you?
I watch EBN TV.
For educative talk shows, I, Griffin Mukilia, watch EBN TV.
Hey everybody, my name is Purity Mudeu and I'm just here to tell you about EBN TV. Are you somebody looking for a Christian station that can transform your world? Look no further. EBN TV, transforming your world.
EBN TV cares about the growth of your business. To advertise with us, call 0725 386 501 or 0740 653 453. EBN TV, transforming your world.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Fitness, fabulous fitness. You need it, we got it. The best home workouts just for you. We keep it fun and sweaty. Join us at EBN TV and get that blood pumping. A fabulous workout for your fabulous body. Keep it fit and fab.
EBN TV is opening its doors to the world through EBN Gospel Storm, a powerful opportunity designed to take your message beyond borders. For an annual subscription of only 5,000 shillings, you gain access to a global gospel platform, and once subscribed, you can hear a 30-minute sermon for just 1,000 shillings. At EBN TV, we are raising 13 gospel voices every day, one preacher every hour. This is your platform to reach a wider audience, to amplify your calling, and to spread the gospel to the nations.
How do we position ourselves? Is it physical or is it spiritual? This book that we preach to position you. Salvation is actually a positioning.
This morning, and of course, I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper, and of course, the Standard newspaper dated the April 24th, the 24th day of April 2026. Just in case you're joining us, my name is Martin Mashari, and this is The Drift. All right. Now, top story on the Daily Nation, they're talking about the numbers, and when I speak about the numbers, you already know is the numbers according to the regions, even as we gear up for the 2027 elections, just some around 14 months to the general elections. Of course, there is a picture there of the head of state, of course, William Ruto, former deputy president Rigathi Gachagua, James Orengo, who is this year's senator, Edwin Sifuna, Gladys Wanga, Uhuru Kenyatta, Fred Matiang'i, the late Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, and of course Oburu Oginga. Now, it is titled Lake Mountain Big Reset for 2027. Now, the numbers say, as the Daily Nation has spotted, in 2022, register 2.1 million. Well, actually, the number of voters in Nyanza region. Not actually the number of voters. They are actually, the numbers that Nyanza region actually has, 2,160,439. Right now, in Mount Kenya region in 2022 registered voters were actually 5,770,976. That is in Mount Kenya region. Now, in 2027 projection of the Nyanza region, they're estimating about 2.7 million. That is 2,776,499. All right. Now, 2027 projection of the Mount Kenya region registered voters, the Daily Nation says they are estimating about 7,416,587. All right. And, it's quite disturbing to see, people conducting, politics in terms of regions, Mount Kenya regions. It is not about ideologies anymore, because you might find someone in Mount Kenya who might decide, to vote for a person from a different tribe, and vice versa. So this region thing, it's quite not, good ideology to go with when, conducting elections. All right. Now, the Daily Nation actually says the fierce rivalry between Mount Kenya and Nyanza region, which have been in opposing political camps in the last 6 of the 7 presidential elections since the reintroduction of multi-party politics in 1992, has influenced Kenya's politics. Now, with the exception of the 2002 vote, when the two regions united behind the opposition candidates to end KANU's 4-decade rule, each bloc has backed its own in other polls, but following recent events, including Raila Odinga's death, the blocs are at crossroads ahead of the 2027. Of course, President William Ruto had an tete-to-tete with, leaders in the ODM party yesterday about what they term as zoning, all right? And it's quite unfortunate to see citizens, being divided in terms of their regions that they come from. We've actually seen, political leaders saying that, I'm a kingpin of this particular region, right? And one may wonder, who gave you that title, That's the story on page 4 and 5. Let's take a look at that on the pages 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation newspaper this morning. Now, the Daily Nation says, as the race to the 2027 elections gathers momentum, two of the Kenya's most politically consequential regions, Luo Nyanza and Mount Kenya, are undergoing political resets that is reshaping alliances and redefining the electoral map. Now long regarded as predictable voting blocks with clear political anchors, the two regions now find themselves in uncharted territory. The absence of long-standing kingpins, shifting loyalties, and aggressive incursions by rebel camps have turned both in the battlegrounds that could ultimately determine the outcome of the presidential contest. Now, the unfolding realignment has triggered intense political jostling with both internal functions and external players scrambling for dominance in regions that command millions of votes. Now, for decades, Luo Nyanza stood as the bedrock of opposition politics under the towering influence of former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga and the ideology commonly referred to as Odinganism. All right. Now, but following the death of him in October 2025, the region has been thrust into political flux, opening the door to new contenders eager to inherit or dismantle his legacy. Already, President William Ruto, United Democratic Alliance, that is UDA, has made notable inroads, culminating in grassroots elections held in Siaya, Kisumu, Migori, and Migori counties. But the signals are calculated attempt to chip away at regions that overwhelmingly rejected him in 2022 elections. At the same time, the once midable orange democratic movement is grappling with internal divisions that have fractured its traditional support base. Now, the two rival factions, Linda Ground, led by party leader Oburu Oginga, and Linda Mwananchi, spearheaded by Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and Siaya Governor James Orengo, are locked in the supremacy battle that has further complicated the region's political direction. All right, that's a story exclusively on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Of course, it is titled, "Without Outright Leaders, Lake Mount Kenya regions face major reset for 2027. Of course, President William Ruto has made major inroads in Luo Nyanza since the death of Raila Amolo Odinga, while he continues to court Mount Kenya, even as Gachagua and others seeks to take control. Of course, we've actually seen, some of the members in the allied to the ODM Linda Ground faction actually saying that, we will support President William Ruto come 2027. And, others saying, of course, the ODM Linda Mwananchi faction actually saying that, as they say, Baba left them in a broad-based agreement, which actually they cite what to bind them with the UDA is actually, the 10-point agenda between them and the ruling party UDA. All right. Now that's on page 4 and 5 on matters politics on the Daily Nation newspaper this morning. Now moving on to matters healthcare on the front pages of the Daily Nation. SHA owes struggling county hospitals 8 billion Kenya shillings. Now the government owes county hospitals more than 8 billion Kenya shillings in unpaid claims, a growing debt that now threatens to cripple the public healthcare system. Now the delayed disbursement by the Social Health Authority risks derailing the Universal Health Coverage Program once controller of budget, that is Margaret Nyankang. All right. And 5.7 billion is actually the amount owed by other two Catholic-run hospitals, excluding 3.3 billion Kenya shillings claims under the defunct NHIF, according to the Kenyan Conference of Catholic Bishops. Right, and the CS for Health, that is Edin Duale, actually appeared before the Senate on Wednesday, where he said, of course, some of the senators actually backed him, including Cherargei, saying that SHA is working. The only problem in SHA, which according to Cherargei, is that, you know, there are no drugs in some hospitals where patients are actually are, you know, forced to seek the drugs outside the hospital, which he said is increasing the cost. But according to the control of budget, that is Margaret Nyakango, is actually saying that SHA, also struggling county hospitals, a total of 8 billion Kenya shillings. Right, and of course, the CS, that is Aiden Duale, when he appeared in the floor of the Senate on Wednesday, said that, you know, some private hospitals actually, you know, defrauding patients, you know, their money, and of course overcharging them. But now, according to the control of budget, she says that SHA still has teething problems because it owes struggling county hospitals total amounting to 8 billion Kenya shillings. All right, that's on page 10 on matters healthcare on the Daily Nation newspaper this morning. Let's take a look at that in context. Now, the government owes public hospital more than 8 billion. Of course, the amounts accumulated since last year have strained operations at county government-run hospital, raising fears of sustainability of services in the universal health coverage, that is the UHC program. And according to the latest call, the county government budget implementation review report for the first half of the 2025-2026 financial year, by control of budget, Margaret Nyakango declared that delayed disbursement is undermining the ability of the public hospital to function properly. Now, the Kisumu County is hardest hit with 1.87 billion Kenya shillings owed by the Social Health Authority. It is followed by Nyeri County with 633.6 million Kenya shillings, Nakuru County with 609.2 million Kenya shillings, and Kiambu County with 474.85 million Kenya shillings. Now, the other counties owed significant amounts. Baringo, the Bungoma County with 387.2 million Kenya shillings, Mombasa County at 334.3 million Kenya shillings, Kakamega County 311.2 million Kenya shillings, Siaya County, Kitui County, Kajiado County, and of course Garissa County. Nyandarua as well is owed a total of 219.7 million Kenya shillings, as well as Busia, Kwale, Embu, and Kisii counties. Now, the counties that are owed the least amounts include Bomet, Baringo, Narok, Migori. And according to the control of budget, the hospitals are also owed millions of shillings by the defunct National Health Insurance Fund, putting more strain on healthcare. All right. And of course, we heard the CS, Aiden Duale, actually went on record saying that you know, they won't allow, you know, some leaders, you know, to defraud patients who actually, which he said that his ministry won't allow, you know, some leaders and private sector people, you know, to defraud, you know, bedridden patients and of course patients at large. Now you can see, you know, what this, you know, SHA insurance cover actually owes to, you know, these particular hospitals. And one may then wonder, you know, how will the Mwananchi then, you know, get services if these hospitals actually say that, you know what, we are not taking, you know, SHA, just pay us cash. It's quite unfortunate for the patients. All right. Now the figures say that SHA owes hospitals, counties a total of 30.05 million. Of course, the Kenyans who had registered with the Social Health Authority by April, according to the Health Cabinet Secretary Aiden Duale, 201 million is actually the amount owed to the Kwale County by SHA, according to a report by the Control of Budget, and 5.7 billion Kenya shillings is what Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops says it owed to faith-based hospitals by SHA 482.6 million is the amount owed to the Nakuru devolved government by the defunct National Health Insurance Fund. 619 million is the amount to be paid to Edu Afya, subject to availability of funds. All right. Now, the head of state saying, new cover may actually have some teething problems, but they are working towards revitalizing the teething problems in the cover. But yet again, you can see whatever is happening in this scheme, which is actually quite unfortunate. That's a story on page 10, exclusively on page 10 of the Daily Nation. Of course, there is a story right there, down there, saying that agony of patients detained by JMN Memorial Hospital over bills. Right, it's quite unfortunate to see how seeking healthcare might, be quite expensive and unaffordable if, this scheme continues owing these hospitals, the surging deaths. All right, moving on to other stories making headlines on the Daily Nation. Tree planting world record, Kenyan awaits final decision. Now, a day after launching his ambitious bid, Kenya's environmentalist Hilary Kiplagat Kibiwot has smashed the world record for the most trees planted in 24 hours, making a major milestone in climate action and conservation. Now, Kibiwot planted 23,326 trees in just 24 hours, surpassing the existing record of 23,060 set by Canadian Antoine Moses in 2021. Now, the record remains subject to official ratification by Guinness World Records. All right, of course, this actually a commendable move, putting Kenya at the map. And of course, congratulations to Hilary Kiplagat Kibiwot for planting the 23,326 trees in just 24 hours. And of course, you will remember that some few months ago, towards the onset of this particular year, we actually saw a lady, hugging a tree for at least 72 hours, which we actually saw, some people joining, that movement and, start hugging trees, which became a trend for some few weeks, few months. But now, Hilary Kiplagat has yet again, set a new record, which is waiting for ratification by the Guinness World Records. Now let's see if, Kenyans will pick up the trend, see whether someone will actually, try to surpass, his record. Because once again, congratulations to Hilary Kiplagat Kibiwot. All right, moving on to the corridors of justice. Kenyan ex-soldier goes missing in Russia. And of course, on August 7th of 2025, Richard Omondi sent a quiet cry for help from Russia's war front. His family's last thread of hope. That's on page 3 of the Daily Nation newspaper. Let's take a look at that particular story. Of course, speaking of, the Kenyan nationals abroad, we've heard little from the CS for Foreign Affairs in regards to this matter. Now, on August 7th of 2025, Richard Omondi sent a quiet cry for help from the distant front lines of war in Russia. That message would become his family's last thread of hope. Now, the message arrived via Facebook Messenger, the only lifeline he had to reach his family back home in Kodomo village, that is in Rachonyo East in Homa Bay County. All right. Of course, despite the family's desperate attempts to reach him, the response never came, and the digital thread that bound them to him simply went still. Now, Mr. Omondi, who's actually 30 years old, he had once served as the Kenya Defence Forces officer in Nanyuki Barracks for 7 years before losing his job in 2022. Now, for a year, he remained at home after appealing the decision, hoping to be reinstated. But when the door closed, he began searching for another path, one that would ultimately lead him far from home into the shadows of a foreign war. Now, the father, John Okiri, recalls the quiet determination that preceded his departure. When the family would later discover pains of troubling picture, documents allegedly sent by an agent who claimed to have facilitated Mr. Omondi's journey, outlined promises of employment abroad. They spoke of visa processing, paid travel to Russia, and financial rewards with assurances of support and more opportunities. But beneath the formal language lay a different reality. By the time his family realized that their son had traveled to join a foreign military, it was too late to intervene. And of course, they are actually appealing for, that particular man to be reinstated back in the country. All right. Now, Omondi's timeline of disappearance. Richard Omondi is actually a 30-year-old former Kenya Defence Forces. He is from Kodumo Village, Rachunyo East, that is in Homa Bay County. And of course, last contact was August 7th of 2025 via Facebook Messenger. And his final message is, and I quote, "I am good, but the situation is difficult." Right, of course, he had served at Nanyuki Barracks for 7 years before losing his job in 2022. And of course, we hope that the government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will see through this particular story and, of course, just try, to reinstate the young man back in the country. All right. Now, police probe lawyer's death after assault. Now, lawyer Tom Oyua Imbuka has died after an assault at his residence in Harambee Sacco Estate, Donholm, that is in Nairobi, in an incident that raised concerns over safety of legal practitioners. Now, police says that investigations are ongoing to establish the circumstances and the motive behind the attack, which left the advocate with serious injuries. All right, and he was found in critical condition and rushed to the intensive care unit, that is the ICU, at the Kenyatta National Hospital, where he later died. Detectives from Buruburu Police Station visited the scene and began reconstructing events leading to his death. Now, by the time of going to press, officers were still combing the scene for evidence and tracing the lawyer's final movements. Now, preliminary information indicates that Mr. Imbuka had missed work and court sessions since Monday, reportedly due to safety concerns, although police had not confirmed the details. Now, the Law Society of Kenya has called for a thorough and speedy investigation into the killing. In a statement, LSK President Charles Kanjama condemned the incident, terming it brutal and disturbing. Now, Mr. Kanjama urged the Director of Criminal Investigation and the National Police Service to conduct a swift and transparent investigation and bring those responsible to justice. Of course, he added that the legal fraternity had been shaken by the incident and appealed to members of the public to share information that could aid to investigations. Now, postmortem later showed that Mr. Bombo died from multiple gunshot wounds and severe blood loss. Now, the two incidences have heightened concerns over the safety of lawyers in Kenya, with stakeholders warning of a pattern of attacks that could undermine the rule of law. All right? One unfortunate story right there of a lawyer who was actually allegedly murdered, with postmortem actually showing that, he died from multiple gunshot wounds and loss of blood. He was residing in Donholm. Of course, Buruburu Police Station actually investigating the matter. Now, on page 2 is Matters Kaikai Kilonzo, Benga legend who refuses to fade away. That's a feature story right there on page 2 of the Daily Nation. You might want to take a look at that on the Daily Nation newspaper this morning. Now, Let's take a look on what's making headlines in the Standard newspaper, or on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And 8 billion Kenya shillings dirty fuel bill. Of course, you will remember that there has been a scandal before, EPRA reviewed the fuel prices. There has been a scandal on the fuel importation where it is alleged that there was fuel that was imported, substandard fuel that was imported in the country illegally. And of course, the CS for Energy and Petroleum, that is CSOP, when I actually said that, the shipment was actually, reversed. It is not in the country. But the senators appearing before a committee, at the Senate committee, the senators actually argued that, the fuel is already in the market. But the CS argues that, fuel is not in the country. Now, when MT Paloma docked in Mombasa, it delivered more than fuel. It exposed a brazen scheme that left motorists exposed to inflated cost and questionable quality. Now, even after Energy CSOP Wandai ordered the consignment withdrawn, the fuel was not removed from the system. One Petroleum has since issued invoices worth billions of shillings to oil marketers for the same cargo. Now, it now raises a hard question at the heart of the affair. Was Wandai managing public outrage with an order he knew could not be enforced, or were the forces behind the deal too powerful to be stopped? Right, that's on page 4. And of course, 11.8 billion is actually the total value of the fuel shipment at the center of the dispute, now under investigation over pricing, timing, and market entry irregularity. And of course, there are pictures there on the front pages of the Standard newspaper, as you can see on the sidelines of your screen. There are invoices there on the front page, and of course there is a picture there of the director of One Petroleum, who is Mohammed Jaffa. All right, now let's take a look at that on page 4 of the Standard newspaper this morning, where it continues to say, when the oil tanker MT Paloma slipped into the berth at the port of Mombasa on the evening of March 27, flying a Marshall Islands flag, few Kenyans knew it was carrying more than just 60,200 metric tons of petrol. It was carrying the blueprint for the breathtaking daylight heist on Kenya's motorists. Now, a confidential cache of invoices exclusively obtained by the Standard reveals that One Petroleum Limited, the Mombasa-based company that imported the controversial cargo, billed Kenya's leading oil marketers to 8.0 billion, or 8 billion, for a single day's supply of petroleum motor sprint. Now, on April 7th, Energy CS, that is Opiyo Wandai, stood before the nation and issued a firm directive. One Petroleum Limited was to remove its controversial fuel consignment from the country immediately. Oil marketers were ordered not to pay the invoices, and the company was directed to withdraw all bills and issue credit notes instead. Now, yet again, the Standard can today exclusively reveal that One Petroleum had already issued at least 57 invoices to oil marketers on March 28th, barely a week before the government ban and a full 10 days before Wandai's order. Now, the invoices were sent while the government was still publicly insisting that the fuel, would not enter the market. A scan through the documents reveals that the Astral Petroleum Company Limited was invoiced. Of course, Galana Energies Limited received a bill for 1.285 metric tons. Now, Lake Oil Limited was also billed for 1,309 metric tons. Of course, that's a story also going on and on page 4. Now, on page 5 still matters oil. Kenya and Uganda to build oil refinery in Tanzania. Now, Kenya and Uganda are in discussions to build a refinery in Tanzania that will serve oil-producing countries in the East African Community, that is the EAC. At last, these East African countries actually, trying, to come with solutions, long-term solutions for in cases of such crises, as you can see, that the country cannot import fuel from Iran due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which is actually used to ship these consignments of fuel. Now, the refinery project is to be located in Tanga has elicited the interest of business conglomerate Aliko Angote, who has expressed his wishes to facilitate a similar project to what he has set up in Nigeria. Now, this will be in line with the current strategic plan of Dangote Group that targets to invest up to 5.2 trillion Kenya shillings, that is approximately $40 billion in various industries by 2030. Now, the refinery is targeted to reduce dependency on imported petroleum products, which is subject to global instability. The summit saw the attendance of President William Ruto and his Uganda counterpart Yoweri Museveni, as well as African Finance Corporation President Samaila Zubairu. That's on page 5. Now, on matters corridors of justice, court refuses to force police to give report of what it terms as fake accident. Now, the High Court in Nairobi has thrown out a case by a motorist who wanted the police to release information about an alleged fictitious accident. Now, Protest Shimenga moved to court claiming that sometime during COVID-19 lockdown, he was told that his vehicle had been involved in an accident in Nairobi, yet he had it in Kakamega. However, Justice Lawrence Mugambi yesterday said that Shimenga had jammed the gun as he had not exhausted all the avenues provided by the law before approaching the court. And according to the court, the complainant would have either asked a lower court to summon a police officer to produce the documents he required to defend himself, and if the officer failed, he would be implored to court to issue warrants to enforce the order. But the magistrate court ordered Shimenga to pay Daniel Ofula 1.3 million for the alleged accident at the Gitanga Mudangari Road junction in Nairobi. Now, in this case, it is alleged that Shimenga's vehicle hit Ofula's motorbike, but the motorist said that it was passing to him that his vehicle was alleged to have knocked someone down in Nairobi while he was at Kakamega. All right, that's on matters corridors of justice on page 5 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning. Moving on to other stories making headlines on the Standard matters educations. Schools hit by fresh funding gap ahead of the second term reopening. Now, schools are once again starting to at a funding crisis as they prepare to reopen for the second term, with capitation disbursement falling short of the required amounts. The second term, set to run for 14 weeks, the longest in the academic calendar, will begin under financial strain, with schools hence forced to navigate persistent budget deficits. Now, shortfall is expected to affect both free primary education and free-day secondary education programs, raising questions over the sustainability of operations in public schools. Now, parents are also likely to feel the impact of as institutions increasingly turn to them to bridge funding gaps. Now, this comes as government announced the release of 23.4 billion Kenya shillings in capitation for the second term. Basic Education Principal Secretary Julius Bitok said that the funds would be credited to schools' accounts by today ahead of Monday's reopening. However, despite the timely release, it emerged that the disbursement falls below the expected allocation for the term. Right. However, despite the timely release, it emerged that the disbursement falls below the expected allocation for the second term. All right. That's on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. And of course, since the onset of this particular year, we've actually seen, some teething problems as well in the education sector when, pupils were transitioning to grade 10. We actually saw parents citing, the high cost of education, the CBE curriculum, when they are actually doing the intakes. Of course, now the commission, the PS, that is Julius Bitok, is warning that there are no funds for capitation. Of course, the schools may once again face, straining funding crisis, cash crunch crisis in, when they are reopening for their second term, which is actually scheduled for next week. Now, 14-week term, the longest in the academic calendar, will begin under, financial strain, and the government announced the release of 23.4 billion Kenya shillings, which actually falls below the expected allocations. And on one, the parents will actually have to dig deep in their pockets to, to fund, this education for their kids. And of course, the president, the head of state, has actually gone on record saying that each and every student to report to school regardless of their fee arrears, their school uniforms. You actually heard him say that during the transition of grade 10 students. And, at one point you may want to, to reason with the school principals. If the government actually, puts a capitation that falls short below the expected allocation, and of course the head of state actually, or the government actually insists of, the schools to accommodate, these pupils. Sometimes it's actually, hard for, the school administration to run a school, providing food for these kids, and, yet they are struggling financially. Right? Quite unfortunate, of course. We hope that the situation will be at least resolved, before they resume school from next week. Of course, now we've seen, there is a cash crunch crisis in the education sector. There is a cash crunch crisis in the healthcare sector, SHA sector, where we've seen in the Daily Nation, the scheme actually owes many hospitals in different counties some amount of money, right? And the basic things for the Mwananchi is actually healthcare, affordable households, and of course education. And when you deny, the Mwananchi these things, actually bearing in mind the hike in fuel prices right now, it might be hard, for the local Mwananchi. All right. Moving on, still in matters education, 3.2 million is actually the number of learners in secondary schools. Each student will receive about 16,845 Kenya shillings annually, well below the required 22,244 Kenya shillings. Now, Treasury estimates indicate that 87.50 billion Kenya shillings is needed to fully fund secondary education annually, leaving a deficit of 26.61 billion Kenya shillings. All right. Now, moving on away from matters education, cross over to the corridors of justice, where a trio jailed for 63 years, fined with 150 million for smuggling 572 kilograms of cannabis. All right. Of course, cannabis is what one may call marijuana or bang. Now, a hawker and a courier and a mama fua, or the quote-unquote mama fua, will pay 150 million as a fine and serve a cumulative 63 years behind bars for being nabbed with one of the highest quantities of bang 2 years ago. Now, this is after High Court Judge James Wakianga affirmed the fine was sentence handed to Stephen Sifuna Wekesa, Ruben Kioko Kimathi, and Elizabeth Wanjiko by Magistrates Court after finding there was evidence linking them to 572.1 kilograms of prohibited narcotics. Now, for this, Wekesa and Kioko will serve 25 years each behind bars and pay 50 million Kenya shillings each at fine, while Wanjiko will serve 13 years and pay a similar amount as fine. Now, this comes as High Court Judge Alexander Moteti separately gave a state green light extradite a former Afghan official Abdul Haji Zahir Kadir, who is wanted by the US. Now, Zahir, who was an Afghan MP, and the deputy speaker was arrested in Kenya but challenged the extradition process. However, Justice Moteti agreed with the director of public prosecution that the treaty between the two countries was within the constitution and international cooperation. Right? That's on matters, corridors of justice, and of course, the three of them has actually been jailed for 63 years, and of course, that's quite a long time. Now, one is will serve 25 years, the other will serve 13 years. Well, the two will serve 25 years, and the other will serve 13 years. That's 63 years, or actually they pay, cash bail of 150 million Kenya shillings because of allegedly smuggling illegal narcotics in the country. All right. Moving on to matters healthcare on the Standard newspaper this morning. States to reform teachers' SHA cover after deal with unions. Teachers are set to benefit from sweeping reforms to their medical cover after the government and unions struck a deal to resolve long-standing challenges under the Social Health Authority. The agreement reached on Wednesday followed talks led by Health Cabinet Secretary, that is Eden Duale, the Ministry of Health, Teachers Service Commission, and Teachers Union seek to streamline access to healthcare, eliminate out-of-pocket payments, and address delays in treatment and claims processing. Of course, you will remember just some few weeks ago, we've seen teachers actually coming vocal and saying that, they will leave, the SHA scheme. And you'll remember that the teachers were actually under the Minet cover. But when SHA was actually introduced, they were actually shifted from Minet cover to SHA, which they've also cited teething problems, but during engagements with the CS and the teachers officials, they have resolved their feuds. Now, the Kenya National Union of Teachers and the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, that is KUPPET, that is not in KUPPET, said that SHA had agreed to address all issues previously raised by teachers, including denial of services, funding shortfalls, and access to specialized care. And a joint national steering committee comprising TSC, SHA, NAT, KUPPET, and the Kenya Union of Special Needs Education Teachers, that is NANSET, has been established to oversee the SHA scheme. Now, experts warn of growing malaria drug resistance. Now, health experts are raising questions or concerns over the growing resistance of malaria disease-causing agents distributed to climate change. Now, experts warn that due to resistance and current regimen, the therapies are not treating the leading to the killer disease. Of course, the experts have actually outlined how malaria parasites develop resistance to drugs that include the use of poor quality of counterfeits, anti-malarial and complete treatment or incorrect dosing, use of monotherapy instead of ACTs, weak health systems, poor diagnosis, surveillance, and follow-up, self-medication, and over-counter access leading to misuse, high malaria transmission levels that enable spread of resistance strains, human mobility, migration, spreading resistance practices, heavy reliance on limited first-line therapies, increasing drug pressure, limited access to new alternative drugs when resistance emerges, and socioeconomic barriers, poverty, poor infrastructure, supply issues. And of course, speaking about self-medication and cover and over-the-counter access leading to misuse. Most of the people actually, when you are feeling ill, you actually diagnose yourself and say, you actually go to the chemist and prescribe a drug for yourself. And it's quite important that, you visit a health facility, be diagnosed and be told you're ailing from this and this situation instead of, being your own doctor, right, which might actually, cost you if you treat a disease that is actually another disease. All right. Now, a Nairobi City lawyer tortured, left for dead. Of course, that's a story that was in Buruburu, where Tom Imbokwa died in hospital, where postmortem examinations actually showed that he died from gunshot wounds and loss of blood. Now in Kiambu County, court freezes VC appointment, where Kenyatta University may not have a new vice chancellor soon after the High Court in Kiambu froze the recruitment exercise. Justice Njoki Mwangi, in her orders, directed that the University Council should not recruit Professor Paul Wainaina as successor and should not take any disciplinary action against Professor Washeke Wanjohi until the case she filed yesterday is settled. Now, she stated that that she applied for the VC position when the council called for interested persons. Washeke told the court in interviews she allegedly emerged the best. All right. Now, HIV prevention jab uptake surges. Now, residents of Busia County have begun receiving a new long-acting HIV prevention injection following the rollout of lenacapavir, marking a major step in expanding options for people at high risk of infection. The injectable drug, which offers up to 96% protection against HIV, is administered once every 6 months and is being positioned as a convenient alternative to daily oral pre-exposure prophylaxis. Deputy Governor Ada Odera said that the response from residents has been overwhelming, with more than 100 people receiving the jab within just 3 weeks of its rollout. And speaking about, this lenacapavir, HIV prevention, it's quite important that, since yesterday we actually read a story right here in the morning on the Standard newspaper, where the largest condom maker is saying that due to the Middle East wars, that the company might actually consider raising the cost by at least 30% or more, right? And if that contraceptive, that condom will actually, hike, that means, such diseases, the sexually transmitted diseases, will actually be on a rise. Now, the Busia County, according to the Standard, Busia County residents have actually taken up to the task, to receive the rollout of lenacapavir, which is an vaccine which was actually introduced just some few months ago for preventing HIV. All right, and let's just avoid sex before marriage, because what's the worst that can happen, to prevent these cases of, the surge in HIV. All right, that's a story on page 2 of the Standard newspaper this morning. Martin Mashara is my name. Thank you so much for keeping me company. You're now up to speed with what you're waking up to this morning as far as news and the governance of this particular country is concerned. Thank you so much for keeping me company until this particular minute. It is exactly 24 minutes past the top of the hour. Coming up next in the top of the hour is the Leadership Challenge with Reverend Felix Kavoy. They'll be going to, share insights and have conversation in regards to the state of the nation. All right. So stick around for that particular conversation that's coming up to you next in the top of the hour, 9 a.m. All right. Martin Mashara is my name once again. Do yourself a lovely day. God bless. And of course, remember to catch up with the subsequent bulletins later on in the day at 1, 4, 7, and 9 p.m. Do yourself a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good morning. And of course, let's do this again when God says we do.